Hey everyone, this is Anna from Dark Horse Marine. In this video, we are going to walk you through in as much detail as possible how to do an 8-plate resplice on used rope. The first step will be the prep, the second step will be the splice, and the third step is optional but recommended, and that is the finishing with the whipping. So stay tuned, and remember, if you can't do it at the end, just drop it off or send it down to us. We'll be happy to do it for you. First, let's take a look at a few splices that really should not be respliced. Some of these are just too stiff, too worn out, or the rope is just in too rough of a condition. Sometimes your bitter end looks better, but if even the bitter end looks like this, I mean, look at that. Rope is supposed to bend. Then really, I wouldn't even bother. There's only one place for rope that looks like this. The garbage. However, if your bitter end is nice and supple and it looks similar to this rope can be respliced. So why is used rope so much harder? Well, new rope is made in a factory, like Buccaneer ropes in Alabama. Used rope comes from the bowels of hell and is just there to make your life miserable. But we can do this. Get ready. Let's go. The first step that I'm going to show you is the prep. This is crucial, and this is the difference. We don't need to prep new rope, but with used rope, even the used rope that looks new, you want to prep it. Don't skip this step. It will make your life easier. After you make your mark about 12 inches down, you're going to soak the rope, but you want to keep that first 12 inches dry. So after you add your water and your fabric softener, you're going to soak just from the mark down. You're going to want to keep the first 12 inches dry if possible. After we soak it overnight, we give it a feel and see if it's ready. If it is, then we grab our rubber mallet, and to make it even more malleable, we're gonna beat it a little bit. That's right, just beat it. You can whack it pretty hard with the rubber mallet, but if you don't have the mallet and you are going to wrap it in a towel and use a hammer, just tap it gently. You're trying to just loosen up those fibers. If it is still pretty stiff, just pop it in and soak it again. To prevent the bitter end from fraying, we always tape off the end and then we burn it with our hot knife. You can use a lighter at home. Some people even prefer to use the wax twine and do a whipped end. Completely up to you, but burning it will prevent it from fraying. Step number 2 is the actual splice. You will want your fid. This is sometimes optional in 3-strand, but it is not optional in 8 plates. So don't skip out on getting the fid. The fid, the wax twine, and the needle can usually be found at West Marine, and usually the twine and the needle will come together as a set. If you have somewhere to tie off the rope on the right while you're unraveling it, it'll make it a little bit easier. We are using a small amount of twine to just secure the spot that we had marked earlier. We are going to unravel the rope to this point, but you only want to wrap it around once or twice because we really don't want to make that spot bulky. You'll see me unravel the 8 different lines in this 8 plates. What we are trying to do though is as we unravel them, we want to keep the pairs together. So you can either do a loose knot like this, or take 2 of them and use something like a chip clip. But you want to keep the pairs together because you are going to back splice them back into it in pairs. So do what you can to keep those pairs together. You'll see that once we get all 4 pairs unraveled, I will smooth them out. This is important because not only does it help keep the splice slim, but you can also tell the difference when you back splice which ones are the unraveled ones versus which are the two that were originally twisted. When we wrap the ends to get this, I will show you my technique for it because you want it nice and tight. So what I do is you get it as close to the end as possible while still encompassing all of these ends. So get as close to the end as possible. You wrap it around one time so that it kind of catches on itself. And then instead of wrapping the tape around, I actually just turn this like a screw against it. And that makes this really nice and tight. All right, you want it about 2 inches long. All right, let's do it. When we trim the ends, we trim them diagonally. It allows it to feed into the fit a little bit easier. You can use scissors or a hot knife. We wrap the chain around a cleat on the left-hand side. If you can find a way to secure it, it'll make your life a little bit easier because you're going to be tugging a lot on that chain. Separate out your 4 pairs so that you have 2 on top and 2 on the bottom. You're going to feed these through the first link. The 2 on the bottom will feed from the back of the link to the front, and the 2 on top will go from the front of the link to the back. You will see that I spend a lot of time doing this, pulling the rope back, straightening it out, and pulling it back in. We try to take out any twists and lumps that we can. We really want this as smooth and as minimal as possible, so take your time. If you do get any twists, just back it out a little bit, smooth it out, and pull it back in until you get it nice and even. Once you get all 4 pairs through the front link, make sure that they're pulled evenly. Turn it to the side and you'll see the same amount of material on the front as on the back. Another thing you will see us use is a spacer behind the first link. For convenience, I take a large bolt and I wrap it in tape, and this is my spacer. You could use a pen or a marker or a screwdriver, but the longer it is, the more it's going to get in the way. So we've just found that this works well. Next, we will start marking the rope. This is going to make it easy so that when you start splicing, you keep the same line going down the same row. So basically think of it as this. Right now we're making this line the pink line. So think of it as your pink car. You are then going to mark a pink road. Your pink car is only going to drive on the pink road. No other roads. It can only go one way on the pink road. And there's no magic to decide which road is going to be the pink road. We just pick the first pair that it hits. So that one is going to hit that pair right there. That's the pink one. So then go all the way around. Notice that the rope twists around. It is not like a braid where it zigzags back and forth. It goes around and around and around. So as you are splicing, if you ever find yourself zigzagging and it looks wrong, that's why. It only goes around the rope. So around it like a spiral. We'll now repeat it with the next color. So pick a line, make it a color. I think we're gonna do blue. Yep. All right, and then when you mark your pairs or your road, try to get it as close to where we whipped it as possible. You want to start it as high as possible, and then you're going to mark it all the way around. And you'll notice that the same color goes under the same color all the time. So here, blue always goes under pink. So mark it all the way down. We're going to do a total of 6 tucks, so go pretty far down. Then you're going to flip the chain over and do the same thing for your remaining 2 pairs. All right, so that's the green car. Now, which one's gonna be the green road? There we go. It's the first pair that it hits. That's it. You really can't get it wrong. You just try to pick the closest because it'll make the splice smaller. So mark it all the way around. And so my green is always going to go under the blue. So as I'm marking it, I am making sure that my green always goes under the blue. So that way I know I'm marking the right line. Your last unraveled pair will be very easy to mark and match up to the pair that it's going to follow back down. Once your rope looks like a unicorn is thrown up on it, you're ready to go. This is just a quick heads up that when you're pulling these fibers to straighten them out, try to pull them evenly. A lot of first-time splicers will pull too hard to one side and we'll see that first link cocked, so try to pull them nice and evenly on both sides. Okay, this is where all of your prep work is going to pay off. Pick your first color, find where it's going to go, and this is where you use your fid to kind of pry open that space to allow that rope to pass under. So for example, the pink is going to go under the purple, and then I do 2 tucks. So it goes under it once, follow the pink line down, it goes under the purple again, use your fid, dig it in. There we go. And it's a little bit tough for unused rope, so you kind of have to use like a screwing motion and then tuck it in a second time. All right, now repeat it with your next color. Try to start it as close up to that wax twine as possible. So this one, we're gonna have to, here we go. We're gonna move it up a little bit and we're gonna pry it. So it's gonna be tough to fit it in, but you wanna try to get it up as close to the top as possible. So there you go. Just wedge it in. And once you work it in once, this is considered 1 tuck. And please don't be put off at the beginning. It always looks weird when you start. Once you get all 4 pairs done, you'll start to see what it's gonna look like. All right, do the second tuck, same process. And you can see that it's already starting to get a little bit tight. Used rope is just a tighter rope to splice. So take your time, wedge it in there, smooth it out. Do it right, it's gonna look nice, I promise. All right, now flip it over and you are going to repeat the process. Pick 1 color, do 2 tucks, and then repeat with the last one. So on my last one, I can see that it's purple, but what I'm trying to figure out is how high up I want to start it, because if I want to start it really high, I'm going to have to really wedge my fid underneath that green spot. But I do want it high, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to wedge the fid right underneath that little tiny spot and start it up higher. So it's not always super obvious or really easy, so I don't want you to feel alone. Another quick what not to do is don't pull it tight that way. We want to pull it lengthwise. So we're not trying to get it as tight as possible. We're trying to get it as smooth and as long as possible. Also, quick check to make sure that it's even on both sides. We made it to the first taper. Yay! First, you're going to count your fibers, find how many are in each pair, and then you are going to reduce it by 1/3. We take it from the top. That way, after you cut it and you go to do your next tuck, you don't want them stuck underneath the remaining fibers. So you'll see what I mean. I am going to be cutting 3 lines out of this. So I'm cut it at the base and then I cut it out of the top. Same 3 lines. So you're reducing it by 3. I have 6 left. So I'm going to leave it about 1 inch long. I'm not going to do anything with it right now. So you're going to cut and then you're going to tuck. After you have tapered and tucked all 4 lines, you're going to end up with 2 on one side and 2 on the other. So now do another full set of tucks. So that will be 4 tucks. After that, we are going to taper it again and tuck it 2 more times and cut it. So basically you're going to have 2 tucks, you'll do a taper, 2 more tucks, do a taper, and 2 more tucks, and we're going to cut it off. It's not the same pattern that we normally do on new 8-plate, but on used rope, that's a little bit tougher to work with. We're going to do a 2, 2, and 2 pattern. So here I am just finishing up the 4th tuck. And when I say tuck, I mean a full round of tucks. When you do all 4 lines, that's a full tuck. I will bend it often to make sure it's still flexible. You made it to the 2nd taper. Something else that you will see me do is to cut off the old one and redo it around just a few. This makes it a lot thinner. If you need to do this after the first 2 tucks, you can do it, but just keep in mind that every time you cut this off and redo it, you are going to lose length, and by the end it could be a little bit more difficult if you don't have a lot of length to work with. So start with about 12 to 14 inches, wrap this as tight as you can, and then if needed, after each taper, you can rewrap it to make it smaller, which will make it easier to splice because you won't have to get the fid into the used rope as far. Okay, here's what it looks like in action. So we're going to cut away another 1/3 of the threads, And then before we would just cut it out of the top. But because my line is getting really tight, I'm gonna retape only the remaining threads. And so for me, that's only 3 of them. So as I tape it off, I'm gonna cut off the original part that I had taped, and you'll see how much smaller the new part is. Okay, so have it taped. I'm gonna mark it so I know which line it goes down if you still need to do that. And then this one is so much smaller than what it started out as. So that means that when you put your fid into your rope, you won't have to go in as far. And that really nice slim piece will be able to slide through a lot easier. Okay, so now I have tapered and retaped all of my lines, and I've done a full tuck. So all 4 lines have been tucked once. And dang, that was a lot. We have 1 more to go. 1 more full set of tucks and we are gonna be done. You're in the home stretch, hang in there. All right, you are going to do a total of 6 sets of tucks. Ready? And done. Oh, that was a lot. Ready to not see this rope again for a long time. Flexing it, then we are going to, remove that. But we are also going to cut down all of these lines to about 1/2 inch. That space is still intact, that's good. This is pretty flexible. We're going to now clean all of this up. When you cut these down, you don't want to cut them completely flush. Leave about 1/2 inch because we are going to burn the ends. We are now going to use the hot knife to burn these ends. We're going to burn them to melt them down a little bit. It's okay to leave them sticking out a little bit. That you want them to kind of mushroom off. When the rope swells, even though it is used rope, it will still suck these ends in a little bit. So that's why we don't want them to be completely flush, because we want to have room to be able to melt them. So you can kind of push them down if you want them flat, but it's okay to have them sticking out. They will get sucked in. You can use a lighter to do this. Your rope can take a lot of heat, so don't be shy with your lighter. Get in there and really smooth it down. I like to flex it before it sets too much to make sure that it can still bend pretty well. Step number 3 is optional, but it is the whipping. And we whip it underneath the first link, but we leave a space because we want to have the freedom of movement. So I will show you the difference. So this one was whipped right close to the first link. And once it gets wet, it swells, and that first link isn't moving. So that means that this link and this big part has to get around your gypsy. This splice, we left the space. And you can see how that first link has a lot of movement to it, which will allow it to bend around your gypsy easier. So when you whip it, try to leave the space. You don't have to do this. A lot of manufacturers, like on their anchor roads, they do not have the whipping. We like to put it here because this tends to be the part where it will expand the biggest, and so we want to keep it as small as possible. If you don't do it, or if this comes undone later, it's fine. Your splice will still work. We just try to keep it as tight as possible, as slim as possible, for as long as possible. I pull about an arm's length of twine out, and then when I thread it through, I double it over and knot it at the end. I like to have a little bit more twine to work with instead of being caught up short. All right, this is what we meant when we said we don't want it too close to that first link. Make sure to leave a space. The first thing I like to do is not only secure it to itself, but then I will knot it directly to the rope to secure it. Now that it's in place, we are going to wrap it around, but we are going to carefully place the threads next to each other. So we want them side by side, not piled on top. So once again, we want to keep this slim. So carefully pull it really tight. Don't snap it. And you're going to go around, I think, about 3 times. So I'm going to have a total of 6 lines of thread going around. Now that I have all that I want going around, we are going to secure those lines in place so that they don't separate. So I'm going to punch it through. Do not put your thumb there. You're going to stab yourself. All right. So it's going to come out the top, and we're going to loop it over those bands. And so it'll go back down on the other side. And you'll see it makes a nice little band across those threads. Your splice is really hard to get through though. So you'll see I use the bench to push it down. Move your thumb. There you go. Because I cannot tell you how many times I've stabbed myself. And once it gets through a little bit, yep, use your needle nose pliers to pull it out the rest of the way. And you'll see it just makes it look nice and finished. There you go. It keeps those threads from separating. We're going to do the same thing on the back end, except this time I'm going to have my needle come out the side because that is where I'm going to knot it to finish it. Now I will knot it to the rope again, just like we did in the beginning. And then once that is done, I don't like to have the knot on top. So I am going to send the needle through to the other side one more time and then pull it in, and that'll suck that knot into the middle of the splice. All right, that's it. Now I'm going to cut that off. And then I'm going to use my hot knife to burn these ends down. If you're not using a hot knife and you have a lighter, I would just trim any of these down. So I trim that down evenly, and I trim the initial end that's sticking out, because if you get a lighter too close to that wax twine, it'll burn it off. And all that work you did will be for nothing. So please just be careful using a flame near the wax twine. Your rope can handle a lot, your wax twine cannot. Here I am just burning down any flyaways. We're going to smooth anything out that we see, or anything that looks too soft or that could possibly get stuck in the gypsy. You're going to burn it. Now's the time. At this point, if you flex it and it still feels really tight, which is the case in a lot of times if the rope is like 5/8 or 3/4 of an inch, just put that whole splice back in the fabric softener and let it soak. But that's it. You did it. Yay. Congratulations. You're a splicer.
You will now be the most popular person at the marina.
That is a resplice video, and don't worry, if this is something hard, just keep in mind that we can do this because we've done it 1,000 times. This isn't something that you know how to do the first time. This is something that takes a lot of skill to master, so give yourself some grace, have some patience. Probably don't do this around kids because you're gonna swear a lot. And if it really is something you just don't want to tackle, or you just don't want to look at your rope anymore after 3 hours of trying to do this, send it on down to us or drop it off. We'll do it for you. We've done thousands, we can do yours, and we'll get it back to you. If this helped, please give it a like and make sure you follow so that you get an alert anytime that we post a new video. Thanks for watching.